Morning. So what is the good life? That is a big question. And for me, it inspired a lot of reflection, a lot of ideas, but it also seemed to beg more questions than it gave answers. So I think I'll start with some more questions. Do we know what the good life looks like? I can remember as a free-thinking, idyllic young person, I really wanted to resist putting any sense of order or goals. I didn't want things like getting married or having kids or falling in love. Those weren't supposed to be targets and objectives and things on a list. I wanted to preserve the nature and the beauty of it all. But as I look back and I look forward with a few years behind me, I think on the other hand, if we don't have a target for what our good life is, how do we expect to get there? How will we know when we've arrived? Do we ever arrive? Is the good life universal? Are there some established ideals that are true for all people, or is it tailored to each one of us? Can we strategize and point ourselves towards the good life? Or does that pursuit sort of risk changing the energy and maybe even chasing it away? This is all sort of a personal question, isn't it? But if it's personal, does it live in our heads or does it live in our hearts? Can we ever really put this into words? How do we honestly answer the question, how are you doing? Are you good? Do social constructs and niceties mask our answers? Do we ever ask that question, those questions to ourselves? I mean, who else besides us would know? Is the good life attainable or is it aspirational? Is it something that we're striving for but we never reach? If we had the good life, if we had everything we ever wanted, would that be the good life? Is abundance another one of these things that could chase it away? Do we know when we're in the good old days, or is that something that's only available when we look in hindsight? What does the good life feel like? Is this about emotional well-being? Is it happiness, contentment, satisfaction? Is it really just dependent on our mood, our state of mind? Is the good life there whether we believe it or not? And is it about leading a meaningful life? Pardon the redundancy, but what does that mean? Is it about career, money, love, family, success? Now, in my career, I've spent a couple of decades in the craft beer and spirits business, adjacent to the food and drink world and music world. And in my professional world, I've learned the importance of crafting and sharing a clear mission and vision. I believe that strong companies ask and answer the question, why do we exist? It's in what they usually call a mission statement. It's this reflective, stated, shared purpose. I also believe that written or not, it lives inside their heart and hands. They have a purpose or they wouldn't have come into existence. Do we ask this about ourselves? What are we here to do? What's irreplaceable about our existence? What do we want to see more of in the world? How do we want to affect change? What is the world going to miss when we're gone? Now that's perhaps an ominous question about what's really inevitable. But I also thought it serves as a deductive path, sort of a logical reasoning towards figuring out what we're sharing and giving to the world, as if we can imagine what will be gone when we're gone. Now my guess is if we ponder big questions like that, our answers of what we offer the world, they start to go well beyond career goals or wealth. I think we start talking about our purpose. Our purpose, I feel, could be described as this living personal mission statement. Why do we exist? What's special within us? What do we want to share with the world? Now, I also imagine that if we're fulfilling our purpose, we're probably feeling like we're closer to living the good life. Although, what if we're technically fulfilling our purpose, but we're unhappy, or we're lacking pride in our process, or how it feels, or who we became on the way there? Now that happens in business world as well, and in my experience, writing a vision was a great influence on teams and shared purpose. And the vision is, I always thought was sharing how we wanted to express ourselves while fulfilling our purpose. What did it look and feel like? Could we put some more color and framework? And that led us to core values. And I think if we uphold core values while accomplishing a purpose, we're more in concert with ourselves and what we want to give and what we want to be. So I think core values then end up being sort of the fundamental ideals that make you happy and proud of your path while fulfilling your purpose. I think these values are elements. They're building blocks towards helping us feel and believe we're living the good life. Now, I think it's important for me to say that I think values are different than context, our environment, our socioeconomics, where we live, what's around us. I think values are different than materials like money and house and automobiles and possessions. I think it's also different than the threats to our values. There are things that maybe we don't want in our lives, and it is important to ponder those, but our core values are things that we know we want in our lives and around us. I think personal values are different than our work values. They look and feel differently, and they have different roles, but I like to think for myself that they should be familiar with one another, that they should be comfortable, they should be honest. I think the smaller the gap between the values we uphold in our professional lives and the values we uphold in our personal lives is going to be a smoother, more prideful path and something we're going to feel congruent with. So I want to take a minute and share some of my values that this invitation caused me to think about. And I hope that it will help you reflect on maybe what your values are. I also like to think of these as somewhat, I tried to test them of thinking, is this true to me or is this true to more people? Is this something that's somewhat universal? Can I imagine this being a component in someone else's good life? So I'm going to use the whiteboard here to try and illustrate how I came up with these. So for whatever reason, I started thinking of things that were kind of in pairs. And I started with a list, and then I ended up seeing a little differently, and I started seeing a circle or a wheel. So, and I started seeing sort of sections. So I just started laying this out, and I wanted to put different values here of all relatively equal space. I started with aspiration. I have always been a driven person. I like to have challenges. I like to go for it. I like to be creating. I like to be striving towards something. And aspiration, interestingly enough, brought adversity to the wheel. So adversity seems counterintuitive towards the good life, but where's the pleasure in aspiration if you didn't make it through a few obstacles? And I think what better to apply our efforts towards other than things that are challenging and things that need our work. So this pair really showed up for me. Authenticity, I didn't always know what I was doing, but I think as I look back all my life, I've been driven towards real experience and not spelling. Real experience is finding the real, transparency, truth. It's a feeling. It's not always a specific thing, but it's driven my career into really championing makers and being curious and just playing with it and finding the difference. And authenticity is paired with generosity, that when we find these great things, don't we want to share it? Don't we want to help more people find them? When we you have a great meal, when you have a great experience, we want to share it with our friends and the people in our life. And I know that without sharing it, it wouldn't be quite as great. I have curiosity on here. We talked about this morning. I love the act and the art and the spirit of curiosity and questioning and looking and finding and just asking why. And the playfulness of it all is something that I've learned to listen to and trust and embrace more as I've gotten older. I think I always had it, but now I'm really starting to value it in a more rich way. And on the other side of curiosity is discovery. So the beauty of being curious is finding things and finding authentic things. And you can see how these things start to relate to each other. And then I have quality choices here. Now this is something personal that I learned in a professional way when I started. I was a home brewer that found myself in the beer industry at the emergence of the microbrewing and craft brewing scene, and I really felt I had dismissed business as the threat to my creativity, but this felt different. It was something real, and I felt like we were actually correcting a marketplace. We were providing quality choices to people who didn't have them prior. The market had been kind of decimated. So this became more personal when I started thinking about, well, if we don't have quality choices in our lives, then we can want these things all we want, but if we don't have access, if we haven't found ourselves with an option, we can start to not feel like we're in the good life. And then on the other side of quality choices, I put gratitude. So I think there's a humility to it, but there's also this idea that, holding space for being grateful and appreciating what we have and what we find, wherever it is and whatever it looks like, that this balancing effort of being curious and finding things and having great choices, being grateful when we receive goodness is important. So this isn't everything, but this was kind of the first collection of values that felt like it would work for me, that it didn't represent material things, it didn't represent a to-do list, but these are things that I would like in my life, and if I had them, I'd feel like I was living the good life. But I started thinking about another aspect, about what about somebody with a different lifestyle than mine? What about somebody somewhere else in the world with a different set of conditions? And I started to think about an outer ring. And I started to think about it as context. And I thought, well, also, I would like a balance between these things. I don't want all of one or none of one. So I thought balance is something that is a context shifter that I didn't think of it as a value because balance needs something to balance. It's not the value, it's how the values get shaped. And then I also thought about, in that regards to what about others, where is the good life found no matter your means, no matter your situation? And I thought about relativity and that this should be relative, that you should be able to do this with nothing or with something. Can you aspire? Can you be creative? Can you be curious and have good choices? That will be the difference between feeling like you have potential for a good life. And then that led me to think about opportunities. So all this is great, but if you don't have or don't feel you have opportunities for aspiration, then it's not there. You can value it, but we really do need some sort of opportunity. And this is where this discussion of privilege can lead us, is thinking, if we have an abundance of opportunities, can we be happy with less? And can we also lead people to opportunities, regardless of what it looks like? And I also started thinking then about support. So what's an opportunity if you don't feel supported, if you don't feel comfortable taking the risk to go for it, if you see it but don't feel like anybody has your back, then that opportunity starts to fade the way some of these other things faded without the opportunity. So either providing that or recognizing you have it or have had it. When I think about, my family growing up and the people that have supported me, it's what allows me this access to all of these things, and even the perspective of feeling like I'm poking at some understanding is because I had opportunities and was supported through them. And that, of course, brings me back to gratitude as well. So this still didn't feel like it did it for me. And, you know, I remember as a like teenager in high school, I had this goal of being succinct, but it took me too long to explain it. The struggle is real. I'm still here. But I thought, well, this doesn't, there were things that I wanted on this value wheel that I didn't put there because for whatever reason they moved around. And so I was kind of done with it. And then I started doodling and I started a second circle. And I thought about comforts. I thought about things that I really value that maybe live within these. I wasn't sure what to call them, so I just didn't bother. But I ended up with comfort. So creativity is something that I really want in my life. And I think if it were taken away, I would feel like I lost part of my good life. And that relates to expression. And this starts to point to all the decisions I've made in my life, things I've done, artistic pursuits, career pursuits. I've really enjoyed the creativity of expressing ideas and communicating to people and helping people understand something, or just having fun riffing on ideas. That relationship of creative thought and expressing it to another person is what makes music so rich and the art so rich and everything really. I also started thinking about pride, that I love the feeling we have when we're proud of what we do, we're proud of others. Pride isn't just ego. Pride is just really thinking something, and you're proud of people, and you're confident in it. And I think you can't have pride without humility. That if pride is just all ego and unchecked and unbalanced with this sense of smallness and the sense of relating ourselves to others and being proud of others, then it goes into something else. So humility and feeling small. I love Mother Nature. I love this part of the state. I love storms coming over the lake because they remind me that Mother Nature could end this all without our sort of creative ways to live in it. I love traveling because especially like into other cultures, because I feel small. I feel like, I'm a grain of sand in this bigger picture. And it's good time for me to think about that and recognize it. And to me, that's about humility. I thought about laughter, smiles. I also thought about just bringing the kids back and having them give this talk because they brought a lot of smiles, and I thought, what am I doing? I need a whiteboard. They just sat around and had fun and taught us more about living the good life than probably I will. I thought on the other side of laughter we have health. That I don't think health is a relative term. In terms of what are we talking about, physical health, feeling good, mental health, presence, or are we talking about a real decay of health where we start to lose these other things? But having health as a comfort is definitely going to influence our view of our values and what we have in our life. And then, of course, I put love and friendship in here. And so I think we can all know what that feels like, but without it, it's going to color everything. And yet it's a non-specific thing. What does it mean? What type of love? How, I think that it's relative to individuals, but love and friendship, relationship is certainly a comfort in our lives. It's going to make us feel differently. Now, I also then in the center here thought about purpose. And I was pretty good at this section. When I started thinking about what's my purpose, what's my mission statement, I really had some blank thoughts about, well, how do I put that into words? And do I really want to share that? And do I even know what it is? I feel like I've spent some time in the zone, and I started to realize the challenge of this is that we don't always ask ourselves that question. But I started thinking that my purpose is about spreading joy. I like to inspire connectedness. I like to invite and encourage people towards genuine experiences. That's what I've done personally and professionally. And I love helping good ideas see daylight. Now, if you look at this, it can feel a little technical, a little intellectual. But I think if you look towards your purpose and values, and you look at them like there are mirrors and crystals inside, I brought props, like a kaleidoscope. So if you look at that and you think about that context ring on the outside being able to be twisted and changing our view, and it's reflecting light into brilliant, vibrant colors and warmth. And you can imagine rotating your scope, your view, your context. It'll twist as our lives progress and change. Intensity, shape, warmth, light, balance, they all change. Our values look different in different light at different times. And I like to think of this as our kaleidoscope of being. When we look through a kaleidoscope, we have no expectation of clarity or seeing straight through. There's no straight through version of the good life. Our environment, our strengths, our shape of purpose, our engagement with our values, they're in a state of constant change. This could be disconcerting. It could be frightening. It's also freeing. You can always adjust your view. This change and adjustment, this randomized, spectacular beauty, to me, it reminds us that it's not a bad thing if you don't feel you're currently living the good life. The act of striving to find it is an ingredient of being in it. If we're reaching, if we're trying, if we're evaluating, if we're looking, if we're asking, we're steps closer. Started thinking about, we ask kids what they want to be when they grow up. It's implied that we're talking about a job. Do you want to be a fireman? Do you want to be a policewoman? Do you want to be an astronaut or a veterinarian? Think about that. We're asking the most imaginative humans in the world to shape their future to our context of jobs and careers. It's something they start with zero concept of. Now, it also connects kids with positive role models, and they may emulate adults they look up to, and that's not bad. It could also imply pressure to replicate. So I wonder, do we sometimes direct them to follow the path instead of exploring and finding their path? What if we asked, what do you want to share with the world? What do you wish there was more of? Magic wand level questions. What do they want their kaleidoscope to look like? Are there lessons here for ourselves? What about our magic wands? What do we want our kaleidoscope being to look like? What if what we do for a living was more about what we are living to do? I want to encourage everybody, look inside your kaleidoscope. Get lost in the colorful reflections of your life. Find your balance. Breathe. Adjust your view. Find new light. Look again. Live your good life. Thank you.